Let's call up the CTO of Wonder, Chen. Hey, James. So Wonder, it's a relatively new brand. So obviously, maybe, you could talk a little bit more about it. But they're the owner of Grubhub, Tastemade, Blue Apron. Yeah, so you're doing a lot of acquisitions. Yeah, and so, we've been talking with Grubhub's story. They've been pretty advanced on AI for some time. So it's a pleasure to meet you also in person, James. Yeah. So let's walk through that moment, right? You were generous enough to share when we reached out to you that I think it was Azure, but or your cloud provider. We could keep it anonymous, but it was in Northern Virginia, data center. So they're all there, right? So yeah, we're back.
Everybody's there.
Yeah. So we're taking it away. But just walk us through that moment when they called you up, and this was even before that crash that we were all talking about a few days ago. They said, hey, if you want that increased capacity, you got to change locations.
Yeah, sure.
What was going through your mind?
A little bit complete opposite of Recursion. We're 100% cloud native company, right? Cloud native, AI native company, so the other extreme. So for us, we built on the assumption that there's unlimited capacity, you can do super fast, and you don't want to manage any infrastructure, right? So that's sort of what's going on. However, given our growth of our company over the last few years, about, I'll say 6 months ago, we started getting little signals from the cloud provider say, hey, you might need to consider to go to region 2, not because it's best practice as to what happened yesterday. Yeah. It's because they're running out of capacity for CPU or data storage at their facilities, because most of them, I'm assuming, they don't share this, but you can read the news, that's taken up by new data center they're building around the area, mostly for AI and GPU related stuff. So it was definitely very shocking for us to think about, oh man, we had to think about plan B a lot earlier than necessary, right? Obviously, it's good practice to be in multi-region, but for us, maybe 2 more years down the road, I think. But now it's like, especially yesterday, it's going to be high on the radar to make sure we can support multi-region.
Right. Yeah. So you're using. We could spend a lot of time on this because of all the different brands. But you're using AI for all kinds of things, right? So for recommendations, for getting the merchants exposed, right? There's another LLM model that you're using, right, to make it really super simple, forecast it, but also kind of simplicity in getting that Grubhub delivery as fast as possible. So it's a lot there. What's interesting, taking it back to the infrastructure conversation, you mentioned something really interesting, which is actually getting concrete about the economics.
Yes.
And you talked about how the technology component of an order is like 14 cents. And then the AI is like 2 to 3 cents. So I don't know, you work that out, like maybe 20%, but it's actually going up. The AI component's going up really rapidly. I think you said something like 5 to 8 cents.
Sure.
Can you talk, right, which is getting close to half, right, or over half. So can you talk about what's driving that?
Yeah, sure.
That increase in AI?
Yeah. So if you think about what happened traditionally, right, with when you leverage like machine learning models or AI, is that you're isolating to very specific scenarios of your journey for purchase. So for us, we create our own model to maximize conversion rate, right? We try to maximize surfacing new restaurants as part of our platform. So these are very isolated scenarios where we train a model over time to be very, very efficient and very fast. However, with the new advancement now, with all the large learning models, like we want to be able to make much more generic recommendations and down to a personal level, right? So similar to maybe what Facebook announced, like, oh, you should get your own AI agent. But from a recommendation platform, we hope each of you will have almost like your own little AI agent or concierge, us helping you on figuring out what's the best food for you, right? So from there, a lot of stuff that we're building, we're probably going to deprecate and replace it with an AI model that's going to learn based on what you click, what you type. And more importantly, being AI native, we do actually want to leverage the wisdom of the crowd on the internet, right? So when you say, hey, I want to eat from the top sushi restaurant around here, what is it? You want to have a dialogue. And then now I don't program that, right? So before, I might need to invest money to build a model to do that. Here, I can just leverage what's out there. And then the part that we're going to spend more time on is to connect the recommendation to our actual offering so we can actually get it to you, right? So there might be other startups out there who's doing really cool recommendation technology, but they don't actually have all the restaurants, and they don't have their own chef or our own restaurants that can actually just give you the actual recommendation.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah, and so I could have asked that previous question a little differently, which is actually, wow, it's only 2 to 3 cents per order, and like, who cares, right? If it's going to like 6 to 8. So in the scheme of things, and then we got into when we were prepping, one of the things I thought you said was pretty interesting and eye-opening is that you just have no idea eventually what that cost is going to be. You're thinking it's going to come down, but I wish I had the answer, Matt. Can you walk through like how to budget for that unknown cost? Kind of the economics of a token-based system that's really yet to hit you, right?
Yeah. So I mean, it's definitely, I'll say for sure, an art versus a science. Yeah. So we're trying to give all of our developers, our data scientists, as much playroom as possible, right? To make sure, because things are going so fast, we want them to try. So then almost every day we have people just reviewing the cost, make sure nobody turned on a model and jacked up like massive compute and have a huge bill.
Right.
But back in the back of my mind, right, what you're looking at is how do I change the way we do software development from human planning, doing tons of stuff, to what can we offload to AI that can give you similar result very differently. And obviously that's going to be increased from cost from the AI side. And then hopefully operating within the same budget, in terms of replacing some of the human plan today. That's sort of how roughly we're looking at it. But then it's very hard to budget because you have no idea, like magically next week it just works. You're like, oh, I'm done. I move something else. Or like, man, you go another month, another week. Or the worst right now is when the AI company comes with a new model. We can't sit here, right? We have to use it. So therefore you have to pull it in. And all from a long-term perspective, hopefully they're putting their own technology to reduce the cost by embedding memory, embedding like context should be there for every single request to drive it down. But in the short term, we're trying to operate within our budget, but it's more like subjective control versus like hard control.
Right. Yeah, and so you talk about being dependent on the hyperscalers, also the model providers for building some of that efficiency. One of the things you talked about, I thought that was interesting, that's relevant, I think, to the wider room, is this idea of it's crazy, I think you said, to actually resend the same request, right, in the context window each time without caching it, right? And various hyperscalers, various cloud providers are doing different things. Anthropic's pretty advanced, others aren't in certain areas. But can you talk a little bit about how organizing around cache? I mean, what we hear from WECA, KV cache, right, is essential for getting ahead of agentic economics.
Sure. Yeah. So I think part of the software development lifecycle by using these large language models now, right, is that you want to preserve the context. And then it's very important when you find something that works, you add it to this corpus of context that you want to send for every single request. And it's big and it costs money every single time, right? So I know across all of them, they're adding their own sort of caching across, whether it's project level, enterprise level. But if you think about what you're doing, almost, the way I look at it is probably like over 50% up to like 80% of your cost is just resending the same information back into the same engine again on every request. So I think that's probably one of the biggest problem, I think, in this space, that the more you do, the more expensive it's going to be. In theory, the more you do, hopefully, less per unit you're paying.
Right.
So right now it's not. So we're lucky that there's billions of dollars invested in this space, so they're not charging us all of the money.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure they're eating all the costs right now. So,
and I presume there's a certain number of things you could do as the end user to do that caching, right? The context caching. But if you were to think through like the other items, maybe the hyperscalers can get more organized around, or other providers, in terms of is there a single other biggest thing that you would be looking for to make the economics better?
Sure. So luckily, there are definitely some startups doing this, right? So going back to the cost per order.
Yeah.
So ultimately, whatever technology we manage, we use, right? We want to look at as a percent of our revenue we get from an order, so the margin. So I know, at least for AI support chat agent, that space, there's tons of startups, right? So some of them are going to a model of cost per case closed. To me, that's awesome. So what I'm looking for is cost per order sold, right? So then this way, I will use unlimited amount of AI recommendation for everything.
Wow.
I know when a transaction happens, sure, I'll pay the 1 cent tax for each one. But I don't want to be limited to use the technology for all these other creative ideas we're going to try to increase conversion. So I know the startups are doing that. I'm pretty sure they're gaining a lot of customers because it makes a lot of economic sense.
Yeah.
And hopefully for the hyperscalers, they can make the economic works by lowering their own costs to run it. So then for a user, it'll be, to me, it'd be great.
Yeah.
They do that all day long.
Yeah, they've talked about, I think Microsoft has done this, right, with Azure, talked about moving to cost per output versus outcome,
I think
right?
startups not.
Yeah,
not
but so what example of startup?
I forgot the name, but I can probably, if you search for it, there's probably 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Sierra is one of them?
CRMs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so which I think great. Like, obviously the AI support use case is very simple, very obvious. It works really well. We definitely use it. We actually have 2 different providers. But ultimately, if it's cost per thing, then you can compare it to $20 per case for a human or whatever it is you're comparing to, right? Then you would use it all the time. So.
Well, James, thanks for opening up so much about your infrastructure. It's really, really interesting. James, big warm welcome. Yep. Applause. Thanks.